Superstar. I'm one of the staff scientists that works at Science North, and this video is titled Water in Nature. And what we're going to be doing is exploring how water shapes the different weather patterns. So you might be wondering, why do we need to know about weather? Well, weather will really dictate the different types of things that you're going to do outside, right? Depending on the weather, you're going to have to dress differently depending on the different weather patterns that you're seeing. Now, one important component of weather are clouds. So what we're going to do right now is that we're going to build a little cloud in a bottle. So in order to do that, we're going to use this. All right, we're going to use a bottle with some isopropyl ribose alcohol in it, and we're going to use a bike pump. So this is not something you could do alone at home. If you want to do it, just make sure that you do it with an adult. I'm going to add a bit of air to this, and voila, a cloud in a bottle. Really, really neat, isn't it? We can actually see this cloud in a bottle. Now, keep in mind, real clouds that you see outside are not formed in this way. Real clouds are formed when water evaporates from the surface of our planet, so from lakes and rivers, from oceans. So it gets transformed from a liquid state to a gaseous form that we call water vapor, and then it rises. And as it rises up in the atmosphere, it gets colder and colder. And essentially what happens, it will then transform back into its liquid state. So these little droplets of water start forming, and they start forming by attaching themselves to a little tiny particle such as dust, and you get these little suspended droplets of water. And when you get lots and lots of these suspended droplets of water, you form a cloud. That's what a cloud is all about. Now, most clouds that you actually see out there are really, really high in the atmosphere. So essentially what happens is that those little droplets of water actually turn into ice. So most clouds that you see up there are actually these tiny little particles of ice that are just floating, suspended in the air. All right, so now we learned a bit about clouds. Let's look at different weather patterns that arise because of these clouds. So the first one we're going to look at is this one is one that you're very, very used to. And that is rain. Okay, so if you look how rain works, again, rain clouds are formed just like the way I mentioned. Water vapor goes up, forms these little particles of ice that form these clouds. And eventually these particles of ice start to clump with one another, and eventually they're so heavy they can't actually stay in the cloud. And essentially what happens, they fall to the ground. So these ice particles fall to the ground, and because it's warm during the summertime here, what happens? These ice particles will then melt, and you get the rains that we are used to seeing, the wet, droopy rain that gets us all drenched. That's what happens. Okay, so now let's look at another weather pattern that we're really used to, especially during the winter season, and that is snow. So again, water vapor ends up into the air. It forms these clouds. You get these little ice particles that float into the air that make up these clouds, and then eventually those ice particles, just like rain, end up falling to the ground. So when they fall back into the ground, because it's cold outside during the winter time, those ice particles stay as ice, and they form the snow that we're used to seeing, which is kind of neat. So what's really neat I want you to realize is whether or not it's snow or ice, the principle is pretty much the same. It starts in the clouds as little ice particles that then fall down, and depending on how warm or cold it is near your house, it will become wet, in other words a liquid, or it will stay as a solid as snow. All right, so another weather pattern I want to kind of show you is one you see more during the summer season, and that are hail. So hail are just these little pellets of ice that you will see. They come in different size and shapes, and some of these pellets are actually not round at all. They can be kind of sharp, and you know, they can really hurt your head. So what happens in this case is that these pellets are formed in very large thunder clouds, and essentially what happens, these pellets form in there. They then get pushed back up into the clouds, and you get this cycle of these pellets going up and down the clouds. So essentially, it's the same thing as rain and as snow, but these pellets, these hailstones, they start off really, really small, And then these powerful updrafts, these powerful winds will bring these hailstones back up into the cloud. They get more water that forms on the outside that then solidifies, becomes like ice. And that cycle goes up and down, up and down. These hailstones go up and down. And eventually you get a hailstone that falls because the winds are not strong enough to keep it up into the air. Okay, so that is how a hailstone is actually formed. So now what we are going to do, we are going to build our own hailstones. So in order to do that, we're going to need some different materials. So what kind of materials are we going to need in order to form these hailstones? So here we go. So you will need at least 1 or 2 cups of cold water. It's really important. There's an option of, if you have food coloring, to add food coloring to these cups. So 1 color per cup. And then an ice cube, some string, salt, a freezer and fridge, obviously. You also need parchment paper, wax paper, or plastic wrap, a plate or a small baking pan. You will also need a ruler, the activity sheet, and also a pencil. Okay, so one thing I want to show you, okay, so it's really important that you do have either parchment paper, or if you don't have parchment paper, you can use wax paper, or if you don't have that, even a Ziploc bag, anything, because once you have your ice cube ready, you don't want it to stick to your plate. So by putting it on this type of paper or film, it will prevent it from sticking to the plate. Another thing that's really important is that you need a piece of ice that has a string in it. So if you already have an ice tray that's empty, just kind of add some water to it, put a piece of string, and just let it freeze. And that's an easy way of doing it. But some of us, just like me, I actually have an ice maker in my fridge, so I can't do that. So I'm going to show you how you can attach a piece of string to ice. All right, so I got a special camera right here, so I'm going to switch to my special camera. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull out my plate right here. I'm going to put a piece of ice, all right, to that plate. There we go. So you can see this piece of ice right here. Okay, so now I'm going to take my string, which is right here, and the trick is, what you do is you just add a little bit of salt to the ice cube. And essentially what happens, the salt will melt the ice cube, and then the string will get stuck to it. And my suggestion, you put it on there, you let the string get stuck to it for a couple of seconds, and then you put your entire ice cube into the fridge to make sure that the string will stay stuck to the ice cube really, really well. All right. So let's go back to the main screen. So when that is happening, all right, while you're waiting for your ice cube to get ready, you can prepare your glasses of water. So what I've done is I have 2 glasses of water here. I've actually put food coloring in there. And then you make sure those glasses of water you put in the fridge, because you really want cold water for this to work really, really well. Okay? So that's another important component to do. One thing I forgot to mention, all right? Before you start this experiment, make sure you get the permission of an adult to do that, because it can get quite messy. And also you want that experiment to be done in your kitchen, okay? Because like I said, it gets really, really messy. All right, so now we're gonna pretend that your piece of ice is ready to go. The string is frozen into your piece of ice. Really important component, you need to measure that piece of ice. All right, so I'm going to shift this again to my camera. I'm going to take out my piece of ice, and I put my piece of ice in a round container. So that's why it's nice and round right here, okay, like this. And it's really important that you measure that piece of ice. Measure the longest length of it. So in this case, I have one that is round, so I'm just going to measure the diameter. In the case for adults, what you could do, you can actually measure the circumference of that if you decide to do that. Or you can measure the weight of that piece of ice. It's up to you. You guys can decide to do what you want. But it's really, really important that you make that measurement, because if you don't make that measurement, then you won't be able to tell whether or not your hailstone has actually gotten bigger, okay? And don't forget to write in that measurement into your activity sheet so that you know how big your hailstone is growing. All right, so now that we have everything ready to go, let's see how to actually make a hailstone. So in order to make a hailstone, what you will need to do is you'll need to go to the fridge. In my case, what I decided to do is I used blue water. So I took my little ice cube, I dipped it into the blue water, put it back into the freezer, close the fridge and freezer, and then I will let it freeze for about 15 minutes. Alright, so you're going to wait at least 15 minutes before you dip again. So wait 15 minutes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go in the fridge, again take the blue water, and then I will take my ice cube like I did before. I will take it out of the freezer, dip it into my blue water, put it back onto the plate, and then make sure everything is nice and shut. And I will let that freeze for another 15 minutes before I do my next dip. Alright, so now you've dipped your ice 5 times into the water. So it's really important after every 5 times that you measure that ice cube. Alright? Then you can dip it 10 times, 15 times, 25 times. See how big your hailstone can get. So I've taken my hailstone and I've dipped it over 40 times over 2 days. I ended up something this big. Okay? So essentially, the process that we are doing is mimicking what you would see in those thunderclouds. So the hailstone would fall through the thunderclouds, be pushed up by those updrafts. As it's going up, droplets of water will form on the outside of the hailstone, will then freeze, forming an additional layer. And this goes up and down until we get something, in my case, this big. All right, so what I've actually done 2 colors. I've done red and blue. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to take a towel, I'm going to wrap it around, and we're going to see the inside of this hailstone. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go out to the street, to the sidewalk, with a hammer, and I'm going to break it open to see if I have those layers that I tried to do. Now, if you want to do this, make sure an adult does this, because again, we don't want to hurt each other, okay? So I'm going to go out, and I'm going to break it, and we're going to see what's inside. Alright, so I just came back from outside. I broke my hailstone. So now let's look at what it looks like under my special camera. Ooh, that looks pretty cool. We can actually see the 2 layers that have been formed from the 2 different colored waters that I've actually used. So I started with blue and then finished up with red, so you can see these 2 layers. It's pretty cool to see this a hailstone that I actually created. Now, one of my colleagues, she did the same thing, but a little bit different. What she did is every 5 dips, she changed colors. So you could see those multiple layers of colors, one on top of the other. And this is probably what you see out in nature with a real hailstone. You get a new layer that forms on top of the other, and you get these multiple layers that you will see. So I would suggest, if you can, try to dip your hailstone in different colored waters so you could see these multiple layers and have a really nice looking hailstone like she did. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we learned that weather is really dependent on water. So if you end up with liquid water, you can end up with rain. If you have solid water, you might end up with snow or with hail. Now, those hailstones that you have created, if you want to take pictures and share them with us, we'd be more than happy to take a look at them and share them with everybody. So in order to do that, you can share them with us at our Twitter account. You can share your different sizes of hailstones, the different shapes. You can show us the different layers that you created and see how big you could actually make your hailstone. So thank you for watching this Science at Home segment, and we'll see you next time.